I always thought the mountains were quiet, but the deeper you go into the Appalachians, the more you realize the silence isn't peace. It's listening. Encounter 1. The man who walks the tree line. I only took the forestry survey job because it promised steady pay and long days alone in the woods. After the year I'd had, solitude was the only thing that appealed to me. The assignment was simple: hike a marked section of the Appalachian Trail near a defunct logging camp, document tree rot, and update the departmental map. People always describe the Appalachians as beautiful, and they are, but the beauty is old, older than anything I'd ever walked through. The trees creak in strange harmonies, the wind curls unnaturally in tight pockets, and the ground sinks softly like you're stepping on something breathing beneath the soil. On my second day, I noticed someone walking the tree line above me. At first, I thought it was another hiker wandering off trail. I called out, nothing. He just kept moving parallel to me, keeping the same distance, always just far enough that the branches obscured his details. A long coat, tall, pale. That was all I could make out. I pushed deeper along the marked trail. He followed. When I stopped to drink, he stopped. When I crouched to tie my boot, he stood perfectly still. I tried to convince myself it was coincidence, a trick of the mountains. But as the hours passed, the dread built in slow, suffocating layers. Something was wrong with the way he moved. Not how a person moves downhill. No shifting weight, no bracing. He walked level, as if the slope didn't exist. By sunset, fog began to drip between the trees, thick enough to taste. I set up camp early, uneasy, exhausted. I kept telling myself he'd continue on, that he wouldn't step into the clearing. But he did. He stood there at the tree line, right where the glow of my camp lantern ended. I could see him better now, his clothes old and torn, soaked with mud that dripped in slow, unnatural strands. His skin was wrong, too light, like he was carved out of birch bark. His face, I couldn't make out at all. The fog hid it perfectly, like it bent around him. He didn't move, didn't speak, didn't breathe. My instincts screamed to run, but my legs refused. I whispered, "Hello?" And he reacted instantly, not by turning toward me, by tilting his head backwards, slowly, impossibly far, until the curve of his neck cracked loudly in the quiet woods. Something moved under his coat, not shifting like muscle, but writhing, like dozens of thin branches twisting through hollow space. He stepped forward. I stumbled back, but as soon as the lantern light touched his boots, he stopped violently, like he hit an invisible wall. Then he retreated a step into the darkness. I realized then he couldn't enter the circle of my lantern. He paced around the edge of the light in perfect silence, watching, waiting, studying the border like he was mapping weakness. I stayed awake all night, clutching the lantern until dawn. When the sun finally broke through the trees, the figure was gone. Only footprints remained, long, narrow, and spaced too far apart for a human stride. I packed up immediately to hike out. But as I reached the trailhead, a park ranger approached me and asked, before anything else, "Did you see the man who walks the tree line?" His voice was too calm, too knowing. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. He just nodded once, like he'd been expecting it. "Next time," he said quietly, "don't be alone after dark." There was no next time. I never went back. Encounter 2. The whistle under the mine. My grandfather worked the mines near Black Hollow before they shut down in the late 70s. The company blamed flooding for the closure, but the locals whispered a different reason. Something about sounds coming from tunnels that hadn't been touched in decades. Sounds that weren't caused by any man or machine. I never believed the stories until last winter, when my grandfather fell ill. Just before he passed, he made one request. Don't let them open Hollow Ridge again. The mining consortium had been surveying the area for a new commercial shaft, and for the first time in nearly 50 years, the old tunnels were being accessed. I took leave from work and drove down to the mountains to see for myself. The foreman, a heavy-set man named Walker, laughed when I mentioned my grandfather. Old timers tell old stories, he said, but his smile didn't reach his eyes. That night, the survey team invited me down for a brief look, just the upper level. I shouldn't have gone. The mine felt alive. The air was thick with the scent of damp stone and metal fatigue. Every sound echoed wrong, not crisp, but layered, like the tunnels themselves were speaking back. We reached a collapsed junction from the old days. The beams were cracked. The stone bowed in strange, warped angles. That's when I heard it. A faint whistle, low and drawn out, coming from behind the rockfall. Walker waved it off. Just the wind through old wood, but there was no airflow. The air was dead still. The whistle rose again, this time with a tremor, a wavering vibrato like someone trying to imitate a human call without lungs to shape it. One of the surveyors froze completely. That's the sound, he whispered. What sound? I asked. He didn't look at me. He only stared at the collapse, the thing that followed my uncle up from the deep tunnels. Before the mine closed, Walker barked at him to shut up, but the man kept staring ahead, terrified. Soon the whistle grew louder, closer, wet. It wasn't wind. It wasn't pipes. It wasn't anything natural. The stone shifted, not from pressure or settling, but as if something behind it was pushing, something long, flexible, sliding through gaps too small for any living thing. Then a hand emerged through the rock, except it wasn't a hand. It was made of stone dust and broken shale, shaped crudely into fingers that bent at angles no joint could tolerate. They curled around the edge of the debris, dragging something forward. The whistle became a distorted imitation of human breath. Walker shouted for everyone to retreat. The tunnel lights flickered violently, and then, for a heartbeat, went completely dark. Something huge moved in that darkness, something scraping the walls, pulling itself upward with movements that didn't match any anatomy I could imagine. When the lights flickered back, the hand was gone, but deep claw gouges marred the walls, carved inches into solid rock. The whistle echoed once more, now far below, as if retreating into the earth that birthed it. We ran out of the mine, gasping in the cold night air, filthy with dust. Walker refused to speak to me. The surveyor who'd recognized the sound quit the next morning, and 2 days later, the consortium halted all drilling. No public explanation, no press release. They just sealed Hollow Ridge again, exactly as it had been before. Before he died, my grandfather left a note tucked into his journal. I didn't read it until after the mine incident. It said only, "The mountain breathes, the mountain listens, and when something learns to whistle back, you leave it in the dark."